Okay. We're going to start with a little warm-up this morning because we're all cold, and I am going to put this down for an interim, if that's okay. So have you ever done have you ever been to a Pasifika event before? Yes? Yes? Yes. So do you know when you rub your hands together, you know this little exercise? Cool, cool, cool. We're going to get our hands together, we're going to heat ourselves up, heat the room up, and make the rain go away, I hope at the same time. So milli, 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 milli. So milli, 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 milli. Now when I say patia, you're going to clap once, okay? Milli, 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 milli. Nice and warm, nice and warm. Patia, patia. Cool, keep going, milli, milli, milli. When I say rua pati, you're going to do 2 claps, okay? Rua pati, rua pati. Last bit, when I say hey, hey, you say ho. Hey, hey, ho. Hey, hey, ho. Okay, keep it up. Okay, one round. Milli, 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 milli. Patia, patia, rua pati, rua pati. Hey, hey, ho. Hey, hey, ho. Nice, good job. Well done, well done. I feel like that's pretty good for like maybe your first coffee, and then hopefully that just elevates from here. And I'm gonna really try hard not to talk with my hands. I don't know who else does that, and I've got to keep this here for the camera. So yeah, we'll see how this runs. But as kind of mentioned, so talofalava, my name is Julia Arnott-Neenee or Ne'e, depending on who you're talking to in my Samoan family. We still haven't figured that trauma out. And this really makes up a little bit about who I am and I suppose my family. So you've got my dad on the left-hand side. So I descend from the villages of Lalomanu and Tulaeli and Apia in Samoa. Also Shanghai in China, so I'm Samoan Chinese. And then my mum descends from the village, which is not really a village, more of a town of Lincolnshire in England. So I'm Samoan Chinese and British. I grew up with just me and my mum. So my dad gapped it after 3 weeks. He was like, later boat, too hard basket. And so I have an incredible mother, Jane Arnott, who I'm incredibly proud of. All the solo mums out there, epic jobs, huge jobs. And I think I turned out relatively okay. And then I have my amazing partner over here as well, who has been a huge support of this journey that I'm going to take you on. Now, I really thought about this word touch, okay? Like I took this brief very seriously, more than normal, I think. Because I also thought, I was like, when I heard Creative Mornings, I thought this was also like this like quite exclusive group. I was like, what the heck? How do they know about me? Like, this is like this creative people. I'm not that. I'm just the annoying people that yells at people on LinkedIn. So I really tried to think about the word touch. And the way I want to frame what you're going to hear today about me is the concept of touch around being in touch and out of touch. And we're going to go through a couple of different chapters and seasons of my life. 1 talking about self, 2 talking about showing up, and 3 talking about speaking up and standing up. And different stages of when I've been in touch and out of touch. And hopefully I'm going to say touch a gazillion times and I can tick off I met the brief and then my creative briefing session here. But yeah, and then hopefully have some questions, Q&A. I think that's the other part of the day or part of the morning. And yeah, we'll just have a talanoa with one another, fingers crossed. Oh yeah, no, back. Okay, so this is where I grew up. I'm going to ask, does anyone recognise what suburb in Auckland this might be? Pre-gentrification. Yes, it actually is Greyland. Yeah, we're not millionaires. We left too early. So this house is 43 Elgin Street, right next door to Greyland Park. Right at the bottom of Elgin Street. Dave Dobbin was at the top. We were at the bottom. We were the peasants. He was a superstar. But I always thought he was the man because he was at the top of the street. So I grew up in Greyland pre-gentrification. And it was just me and mum. And it was a really unique life where obviously I didn't even recognise that we were in a rough neighbourhood. But when my mum sent me to Remuera Primary and the girls refused to come over to my house because of the suburb that we lived in, started to make it very clear the kind of environment that I was growing up in. But it was just me and mum. And these are some baby photos of me, and I'm also trying to get a dog, so I'm also putting this in front of my partner if he was here, just really trying to slide that in. But it was just me and mum. And as I kind of mentioned, my mum is incredibly brave and badass and pulled me into line a lot. And this whole journey, my whole identity and sense of self was curated through her lens. And so I think even at that point, I didn't recognize what was obviously a version of white assimilation or a version of understanding myself through her eyes, through her views, through her privileges. And it's only when people used to ask me all the time, are you adopted? Oh, you speak well for a brown person. or are you on a scholarship? Did I start to realize that my mum was not also teaching me that I was brown showing up in the world? She was assuming that I understood and was experiencing the same reality as her. And so that was kind of like one of the first examples, I guess, of, potentially being out of touch with myself. And it really started to come to life when I did Irish dancing. Now, I'm obviously not Irish, right? I'm obviously not Irish. And there was a cultural concert in primary school. And there were multiples of different cultures. And I, first of all, went with the Samoan group. And we were doing the sasa, so we were on the ground doing the sasa. And I didn't like slapping my legs. It really hurt. I just wasn't feeling it. So I trotted off, and again, because I hadn't been told necessarily that I was brown or I was Samoan, and I trotted off to the Irish dancing group. And I just joined them, and I just did and then the crack up part was my mum invited my dad to the cultural concert, didn't tell him what group I went to. So out come all these little, everyone else that kind of demonstrates a little bit more what Irish looks like, and then there's me, and my dad was like, what is going on here? What is our daughter doing? And so I guess this is, again, a bit of an example around the journey that I've been on and showing up and understanding who I am as a person, who I am in my identity, has had different stages of recognizing when I've been out of touch and when I've been in touch. And this is also iconic for me because I went to Maristone Bay. There's me, yeah, in the middle. And as you can see, this is a predominantly brown class, apart from Paige, who I actually remember her name, apart from Paige. Then you see my private school over here, where you've got the 3 brownies in the back corner, went from middle row to back row, shoved in the corner, and I'm the only Pacific person in that whole year group at my school down in Otautahi, down in Christchurch. And even this journey of, again, where I started in year 1, where I ended up finishing in year 13, really started to give me a sense of, I dropped my Pacific last name at this school because I got teased so much for it. I remember some girls saying to me, we wouldn't have told on you if you were white. They used to say that I used to steal their lunches, push them around in the schoolyard. It was crazy, and I didn't realize what was happening. I didn't realize it was because of my skin color. It was just occurring to me. And so what I did was what any young person potentially does who isn't strong in their identity. I assimilated. I removed my Samoan last name. I tried to look like them, speak like them. I even joined Young Nats. Don't judge me, but that was like the pinnacle of trying to be like them, talk like them, thinking that was the way to survive at that point in time. And I guess what I am really proud to say is that within this journey, this is me now at 30 years old, where I've just started Samoan Siva classes. So I'm learning how to dance, not Irish dancing, but Samoan dancing for the very first time. I'm starting language classes Wednesday next week to learn Samoan, obviously Samoan language. And then I'm proudly presenting myself as a Pacific woman in much more of an authentic way that blends both a modern and ancestral lens that really owns who I am and the journey that I'm on. And the reason why I bring some of these parts up is there's sort of the violence that you experience between the dominant cultures and a minority or an underrepresented culture. But what also isn't speaked about is the lateral violence that I experience within the Pacific community. Now, it's quite a sensitive topic because I'm also identified as not being necessarily a real Samoan. So because I've had a much more of a Western and Eurocentric childhood, and I talk a certain way and I present myself in a certain way, and I can't speak the language, I don't know how to Siva, I don't know all the right cultural customs, I'm also obviously seen, and this is a byproduct of colonization, as a lower class of Samoan. And so the journey, obviously, to navigate coming into touch with identity and to come into touch with who I want to be in this age and the journey that I'm on, I never anticipated the rub that I experienced within my own community at the same time. And I think that's also an important thing that needs to be brought into the mainstream kind of narrative and discourse, because a lot of people think, if you're brown or if you're Pacific, you're all one homogeneous group. You're all the same. You can just tick us off, and if we're lucky, we're separated out from Māori, but if not, if they're going really tokenistic, then we're all one group. So it's been a really interesting journey, and it's been one that is still, it's a lot of healing, it's a lot of reclaiming identity, reclaiming my narrative, my image, and reclaiming how I want to show up in the world. So this is chapter 1 of talking about touch and touch in relation to self. I hope I'm hitting the brief. second chapter here, touch in terms of how I show up. So this kind of starts to speak to, I guess, my career part. So I purposely didn't jam this all into one straight line as well, just to kind of make it quite easy and digestible, because my journey has been a squiggly one. So I started out, so I work in technology, or I work in the space of technology and social justice, but I was not a top A student. Like I was the little clown. I think I took on that natural brownie that was like laughing and making all the jokes and was like picking on the teachers and was putting the duster at the top of the board because the teacher was short, she couldn't reach it, and I was tall, and I was just really double down on that kind of persona. So the fact that I'm in technology now is crazy to me, because I wasn't ever a really studious person, and I wasn't ever really successful in school, and I always got told to manage my impulsivity. Don't think that's changed. And so this is quite a fascinating one for me. So I'm going to present my video that I did to get into Clemenger Group. You know Clemenger Group? Yeah. And it was my first ever job and career. So I studied at UC, did marketing and a Bachelor of Commerce, and then I went and I got into the Clemenger Group program and worked in the planning department. You guys know planning and the thinking side. Anyway, I didn't know what it was, but I said yes. And so I had to do a 90-second video. Can I press play on this? Oh yeah. I had to do a 90-second video explaining why they should pick me. So this is just going to kind of give you a flavour of, I guess, where I was in my journey of knowing who I am. And I guess I'll let you decide how that sort of plays out.
Clemenger Group, my name is Julia, and I'm 21 years old from here in Christchurch. When Paul came to visit, he was talking about being real and being honest and being humble. And one way I thought I could show you that in a 90-second video was by shedding my mask and making myself vulnerable to you as complete strangers. So here we go. That was inspired by Dove's Real Beauty campaign. As you can see from my CV, I've been chosen for a range of opportunities, and what I've loved most about that is bringing my skills to the table, working with others, and being part of a movement that's more than myself. I'm hungry to learn and work and experience all that there is about life. I hope the Clemenger Group can see that I'm a worthy investment.
So I was 21 when I did this. And what I find quite interesting about this is I had just come off the back of doing Outward Bound. Do you guys know Outward? Yeah. You get stripped apart and you're feeling all the feels and doing all the work. And so I think this is where I was coming from that place, and you could kind of hear it in what I was sharing and what I was saying. And the irony was I went to advertising, which I call a morally bankrupt industry, to be really honest. Like, Colenso was the most traumatizing workplace, or one of the most traumatizing workplaces I've ever been in. And it's this kind of, again, this rub of like, okay, the person inside of me was kind of coming through, but again, because of what Clemenger stood for advertising, that you're a grad, you're kind of like desperate to be seen as worthy and valuable. I was really out of touch around where my values were and how my job was aligned to that. So this is where I really started in my career. And again, I'm not trying to tell you the highlight reel. I'm kind of more trying to tell you the personal journey that I've been on over the past few years. Wrong way. So I only lasted 1 year. It was honestly, I had one of the strat planners tell the whole office in front of everyone that I was their token brown girl. So that didn't last very long. And I then went and worked over in Sydney. I worked as a strategic planner and researcher for a healthcare advertising company. And again, I thought I was getting closer to purpose. You know, I was like, okay, I'm in healthcare now, I'm in this healthcare sector. But I started to work for Big Pharma. Now, if you know Big Pharma, they ain't it, right? They are not it. On my first day, I was interviewing a man with advanced prostate cancer and his wife to understand what does quality of life look like for him, or to make ads and sell more products. And it really burnt my soul. And again, I was like trying to understand, how do I find this place, this convergence of purpose and profession? And it really kicked off because I worked at this healthcare advertising company, and I experienced sexual harassment by, again, one of the senior strat planners who, just completely inappropriate, a Me Too moment. And I remember telling the CEO and the head of strategy, and they go, oh, well, we'll just put you in a different room. And I was like, whoa, I'm in healthcare. Like, I knew advertising was bad, but I thought healthcare would be a little bit better. So I remember I came home from that day, and I sat down and I was like, okay, all of this emotion is really energy and motion. I think I must have read some woo-woo podcast, and I was really on that buzz, it's all energy and motion. How can I use this as a force for good for myself? So I sat down, rewrote my whole resume, applied for roles in strategic planning and technology across the world. I knew that technology was the fastest growth industry, and I was always trying to find a way to pay back my mum for my private school fees, basically. And I wasn't an A+ student, so I was like, I'll just go where the cowboys are going and give that a turn. And I applied for roles all across the world, and I heard back from a call from Romania. And I was like, shit, what have I done? And the recruiter called me and said, oh, is this Julia? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, yeah, so I'm calling for the role of strategic planner of United Kingdom and Ireland. I was like, oh, yeah. And he's like, oh, so why did you apply? And I just go, oh, well, it didn't say you couldn't. That was it, because I was like, I have a British passport. They didn't say anything about, needing to have lived there. So I'll just try. And I had 5 interviews, 6 weeks, and I got the job at 24 years old. A strategic planner of United Kingdom and Ireland, one of the biggest top 5 markets of HP, and I left 2 weeks later. And somehow I got myself again on the front cover of the Daily Ink, the intranet, and the big corporates, they love that stuff. And yeah, I was a human of HP. And again, the sense of what's your purpose at work, for me it's connecting with others. So again, it's like I'm so desperate to have a bigger meaning, but I'm still catching myself in these environments that really are not in line with that and not in congruence with that, and are really much more extractive as companies. So this was me at 24 years old, trying to still figure out, where do I go, how do I find that place of connection. And then comes this point, and I think, bless Cindy for not replying to me. But I was heading these moments of big existential crisis. I remember walking the streets of London, and I just wanted a bus to take me out, because the pain of not knowing where I'm meant to be in the world and how to make a difference was just so high for me. So I did what any Gen Z did, or young millennial at that time, and I thought I could just aim for the top and see what happens. And so I emailed the Prime Minister and I said, what are you doing in this space? And one of the parts about working in tech is that you're obviously just seeing the forward movement. And with someone with a social conscience, or with a sense of values of justice, all I was thinking about was who was being left behind. Every time HP tries to shorten refresh cycles, or every time they try and increase the price point, or every time they've got this new big idea, who are the people that are still not even at the start line? And what's going to happen to them? So I LinkedIn DM'd the Prime Minister, and I was just trying to find a way. What is the way that I could do something with this, both this energy but this experience in the industry? And I didn't get a reply, but I did try and resign from HP. And the CMO, actually, the global CMO, ended up calling me up and said, oh, yeah, so your resignation is denied? And I was like, what the frick? And he's like, yeah, so what's actually the problem here? And I couldn't really tell him, I don't believe in capitalism and your business model is fucked. And couldn't really just, riff that off. And I was like, oh, it's the weather. I was like, I'm Samoan. I need the sun. London is grey. It's just not good for me. I was like, I still hadn't found my voice at that point. And he goes, oh, well, what about California? I was like, oh, I won't say no. And so I got a promotion, and that was loose. I was like, what the hell? I got a 40% salary increase. I was like, this is a trick. I'm going to tell other people to do this. And then they transferred me over to San Diego, and I started working in San Diego as a worldwide product insights manager, and then finished up there as global social strategy lead by 27. And I was like, this is loose. But I consciously knew at this point too, I wasn't moving forward into purpose. I was taking a sidestep to build skills in my kete, experience in my kete, that I could at least take home and be able to say, look, I did this, and with the current statistics, which we'll get to later on, around what representation looks like in the tech industry, I knew even that was gonna mean something, or I hoped that was gonna mean something. So I went over to San Diego, and sorry for telling you all the real stuff, but I was drugged, kidnapped, and robbed on a work trip in Hollywood, me and another work colleague. I shouldn't laugh, but we are okay. We had lots of therapy afterwards as well. And I remember thinking, man, if anything more serious had have happened, would I have been proud of where I was? And it was just an easy no. So I resigned again. And this time they were doing a restructure. So then I tried to slide in for the remuneration package real hard, and I got that, and I was like, okay, cool. And I just got on a plane and just came back home. And that was at February 2020, approximately. And what I find so ironic about this is that I wrote this, and I'm showing you my journals now, we're going real deep. This is me at 21 saying I did it. I got to Outward Bound, I went to China, got into Kalenso video. And the crazy thing that's in this, it says, these have come with sickness, sweat, tears, burnout, all the things. I have done it. I have sacrificed a lot for each and taken to get to this point. But I have not sacrificed my morals or values to meet these achievements. And I find that so buzzy that I really thought that. I really was like, I have not jeopardized who I want to be. I've not jeopardized my integrity to get to these places. So I think there's an important learning for me that, it's different evolutions of yourself. You are going to believe you're in touch with yourself. You are going to believe you're in alignment. And then this was my other journal entry before I got the plane. This is 2019, before I got back here by February 2020, where again, I'm writing aligned and intentional. And so I kind of pulled this up because I think that's I've always been guided by this compass, and at times I've really thought I was there, and then I had to go through a lovely little trauma, and then I realized I wasn't quite there, and then we tried again and we tried again. But that journey has been both a brutal journey and a blessing journey at every point and at every evolution of who I've become in that space. So now I'm going to sort of share a little bit more around who I am today. And I guess the work that I do today, especially around justice and especially around standing up for things. So this is the current state of play that I was kind of talking to. So currently today, 25% of Pacific people don't have access to the internet in New Zealand today. That's a huge statistic, right? And those houses are predominantly multi-generational houses where young people do not have access to the internet. And so this is the kind of state of play when we're talking about digital inequity. We're talking about Wi-Fi. We're talking about access and skills, confidence and trust and support. When we're thinking about representation, our current stats again, and they're kind of flawed stats, 2.8% Pacific, 4.6% Māori, 27% female, and that's getting less diverse year on year. And if you think about, well, why is it getting less diverse? Well, if we've got 25% of our community that are a young population that don't have Wi-Fi, how do we expect them to come into this industry? You've got to solve root cause. You can't just solve symptoms. And that's been one of the most difficult conversations to have with industry, like Salesforce, AWS, being like, yeah, let's get some more brown people, let's change our optics. And it's like, well, you need to shift structural change. You can't just be trying to find the grads to put them in entry-level roles and just leave them there, and then now you look good and you solve the big problem. And the impacts and how this really plays out, as I kind of illustrated, is we think about access here, then you think about literacy, fluency, then you think about awareness of a pathway. If only 2.8% Pacific people are in the industry, what are the chances that someone who is a Pacific person knows one of those people? And then there's having interest in it. Oh, well, how do I get curious? How do I have a chance to experiment with that? Then there's acquisition of skills. Then there's entry-level roles. A recent study that was actually presented here by the Māori Tech Association in Puhoro found that majority of Māori and tech young people leave workplaces in tech specifically within the first 3 years because it's culturally unsafe. So we've done all this work to get to here, and then a simple experience like mine, where I could get called the token brown girl like this in front of a whole workforce, we drop out, and then whose fault is it? It's ours. Because we didn't survive, because we weren't able to make it work. And you kind of know some of the stuff, like how inequity shows up, the issues around the tech industry. You think about digital inclusion as a social determinant of health, so it impacts our well-being, the digital division in society, automated oppressive AI, like ChatGPT, that's Eurocentric to the days. to their days. A digital underclass, like we've gone from factory workers in meatworks to now being factory workers at call centers, and then they say, oh, you're in tech. And it's like, yeah. We ain't on those 6 figures or 7 figures, brother. That ain't the same thing. It is not the same thing. So this is really where I've become incredibly passionate about and where we built Whaibawhale from, around building a purpose-led organisation that models, delivers and advocates. And the reason why I use the term, oh yeah, that's me and my amazing co-founder, she's way cooler than I am, by the way. We use the words model, deliver and advocate is because not only are we working in tech, but we're also building a new way of being as an organisation. So we're purposely not a charity, we're purposely an LLC, we purposely have a mission lock, we purposely say no to contracts, there's a whole bunch of things that we're trying to model a regenerative way of being as an organisation, not just advocating for change. We deliver interventions and we do a lot of advocacy work at a systems level, community level and an individual level as well. You can't quite see this, but our big mission is like, and this needs, if someone wants to copyright this, I'll take you up, because some of it's new, is that we're fostering Pacific contributors, creators and controllers. So I don't want to see us at service desk roles. I don't want to see us stay there for 8 years, never get a promotion. I want us to be building and controlling the direction of the industry by bringing forward our ideas. I want to have the industry evolve to be more equity, culturally inclusive, to meet our self-determined aspirations. So I don't want to become a CTO for you so you can make bank. It's like, well, how do you make me become what I want to be and build my business? And then our existence as Whaibawhale role models encourages the next generation of organisations to, rather than having to go and play in the system and change it, actually be building a new way of being, and that forces the systems to change over time. So yeah, we've done a whole bunch of stuff. It's cool. This is model, deliver and advocate, the 3 strands that we speak about, and the reason why we do strands, because, fibre, playing on that, and how it's all interwoven. And this is just some of our role models that we've done. This is a platform that we're building and a series that we're creating, really trying to reclaim our image and our narrative and identity. A lot of the images that are out there are colonial images and narratives around who we are, what we look like. We've got a little teaser here, which maybe we'll try and do this again.
I'm a developer evangelist. When I told my dad that for the first time, he didn't even hear developer evangelist. What that is.
Do they know what coding was? No, not at all. For the people that did know and I told them, they're like, that's different, that's so not you, Jazz.
Checking references and that, and you already get that initial
When people would ask me, like, oh, are you going to go on X Factor? And I was like, well, no, I'm not going to.
So does anyone's parents actually know what they do?
Do we know what we do?
Yeah, and then this is a lot of our interventions, so really trying to bring our communities in at that exposure level, experimentation, again, us in different rooms doing advocacy work, and so it all kind of ladders up to that bigger vision. And the reason why I wanted to land on this last quote, and probably where I'll leave it, is as leaders of this kaupapa on a mission to deliver transformative change, we know that the success of an intervention depends on the interior condition of the intervener. In other words, our success as change makers depends on not what we do or how we do it, but the inner place in which we operate. So how in touch you are with yourself, with how you want to show up and with what you stand for. So kind of what I've come to realize is this journey of identity, this journey of going through the industry has really led me to be able to be operating from a better place and a deeper place and a place of lived experience. Yeah, that was it.